through the roof. But strangely, because of the credit crisis, people were cutting back on trading. So last year, for a couple of the quarters, volumes were down by half in some of the most incredible fundamentals ever. Now you got deficits of $1.5 trillion. You know, in the old days, I would have said that was my birthday, because what's better than that kind of issuance? So starting 2 weeks ago, volume started picking up, both in the cash market, which is great for BGC Partners business, and on the CME, you know, the old Chicago Board of Trade volume. So you're going to see Treasury volumes picking up. Of course, over time, you got to see yields picking up with that kind of issuance. But you know what? They're really compressed low, so a little jump in interest rates is not that bad from these really low levels.
Well, you're downplaying this a little bit. I'm glad it's good for your business, but what does it mean for the U.S. economy? Because that's really what people want to know. Yields are going up a little. Aren't you afraid yields are going up a lot at this point?
Well, ultimately, remember, you can't get yields to go up a lot until there's real growth. So it's kind of like it'll be the next high-class problem. But while the economy is sort of limping along or worse, declining, you're not going to see interest rates growing because you're just not going to see the demand pull for money. People are cutting back. They're afraid. So ultimately, when we start to grow again, which I don't think really is going to happen until 14 or 15, then you're going to see inflation. But right now, that's a high-class problem. That's why they've got those big deficits in the spending.
We've got all my colleagues standing by over in the studio. And, Sue, I know you've got a couple questions here.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to cede my time to JimRogers, who is jumping out of his seat right about now.
JimRogers is here as well.
How can you say that yields cannot go up until the economy picks up? The government is going to sell $1.5 trillion this year of new debt, and then $1.5 trillion next year, and $1.5 trillion the year after that. Who's going to buy all these bonds?
Well, what's happened, first off, fear factor drives people to buy bonds, right? So you have, I mean, come on, you have Treasury bills at 0.25%. Who's buying them? People, it's better than putting your money in a mattress, right? Because at least the U.S. government owns the printing press, and they're going to give it back. Corporate issuance over the last year and a half has been so low and credit so constrained. There's $3.5 trillion sitting on the sidelines, and basically it's just buying U.S. Treasuries. I mean, the U.S. Treasury market is the only place you can get your money back. So I think until you've got real growth and real credit demand, you're not going to see rates appreciably grow.
Howard, how many foreigners do you think are going to continue to buy U.S. dollar bonds? You think this is going to go on till the end of time?
Compared to what? I mean, these are one of my favorites. People say, well, you know, the Chinese are going to stop buying U.S. governments with their surpluses, and they're going to buy what? I mean, remember, the U.S. government...
What if they just stop buying?
Yeah, first of all, they can just stop buying. And second, Howard, they've already started buying things like zinc and oil and cotton. They've started putting their money into other things. And what I want to know is, why aren't you? Why are you still buying government bonds? Why would anybody buy government bonds in U.S. dollars with what's going on?
Because you get your money back. The fact is, you can't spend $1.5 trillion surplus and zinc and copper and in oil. There's only one place you can put $1.5 trillion with any shot of getting it back in the world. And you know where that is? The U.S. government market. That's why we can run $1.5 trillion surplus deficits. I mean, think of the U.K., right? Think of the U.K. Will you buy their bonds? I mean, what do they have? They have a constrained economy, huge deficit as compared to the GDP. There are limits. There are limits.
So you're not worried about the deficit. You're convinced that eventually we're going to grow our way out of the deficits, just like we did in the early 1990s.
No, I think first we're going to grow, and then I'm going to join Jim Rogers' side and say inflation's coming. So I agree with you. You just got to give it a little time. You just got to give it a little time.
Howard,
he's going to go to Africa too
Howard,
next.
The only way we're going to solve the deficit problem is if the tooth fairy comes to our aid. I assure you, it's not going to work otherwise.
No, I didn't think the deficit problem. I'm saying we're not going to see inflationary rate growth until we have underlying GDP growth, and then we have demand pull. So I'm saying when the U.S. economy starts to pump and grow, which isn't going to happen probably in my call, 2014, 2015, then you've got serious inflationary bite, but not until there's growth will you see inflationary bite. It's never fixing the deficit problem. It's never fixing that.
Hey, wait a second. I've got Larry Kudlow here, and Larry, I'm going to give you my mic. Come here.
Oh, okay. Here he goes.
All right, so here's Howard. Larry Kudlow's with me as well, okay?
Who's on the other? I can't hear.
Howard Lutnick of Cantor Fitzgerald.
Oh, Howard Lutnick,
how are you?
friend. I heard JimRogers saying a lot of good things just now. I really heard him say a lot. I got to agree with him. I was coming up to give him a big kiss, my old buddy JimRogers.
If you agree with me, I change my view.
I know you're going to have to switch your position.
Larry doesn't. You don't have an IFB, but Howard is saying he's still buying treasuries because basically it's the only place where you can put your money and get your money back. Jimmy's making the point that with the he sees a coming currency crisis with the U.S. dollar, and so he sees that the Treasury market is basically not worthless, but close to
perilous.
Compared to what?
Howard Lutnick is a great American
what?
and one of the best financial executives in the history of this country. But having said all that, why anyone would want to buy Treasury bonds right now is utterly beyond me. How about
the yields were steepening, the curve steepening,
they may
paying more interest.
JimRogers has this story exactly right. You look at these policies, we're selling too many bonds, the Federal Reserve's printing too much money supply, and
Inflation's going to kill us.
I agree with the global commodity play. I totally agree with Jimmy on this.
Okay.
And Howard, how much of this is coming from a guy who makes
you got to get it right. Wait, time out. I am not
And can we get
saying,
Arnie onto the floor
I
so
am
that we
not
can do
saying
this?
that rates, I am not saying that rates aren't going to creep up. I am simply saying that they are being constrained. They are not moving in a way that you would suggest because there is huge global demand of all this money, $3.5 trillion sitting on the sidelines that is not playing in the stock markets yet. It is not playing in the credit markets yet.
There is no
it's
constraint.
Basically on the sidelines in treasuries.
Howard, you got 3 Democratic houses right now in this country, and they are printing bonds for all matter. Listen, you got health care discussions going on in Washington right now, where they are talking not about solving the hole in Medicare and Medicaid, but creating new entitlements. Now, I ask you, how are they going to fund that? Selling more government bonds. And at some point, to make it even worse, we're probably facing a big, fat value-added tax to pay for all this nonsense, which is going to do harm to the economy, which will hurt the dollar even more and sink the bonds even more.
Okay,
Howard,
Howard,
don't you
ball's in
remember?
your court.
Wait. Howard, don't you remember the 1970s? In the 1970s, bond yields went through the roof. They went up from like 5% to 15% long-term bond yields. And the economy was bad all over the world. We had inflation, we had commodities going through the roof, and nobody was buying bonds, except maybe you.
No, look, it's again, I'm in the marketplace for treasuries. I'm simply saying, Jim, you're going to be right. You're just calling it 4 years early, pal. 4 years early.
You're saying
on the same
come to my
subject.
store and buy some treasuries is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of treasuries to sell, you
Listen,
and the U.S.
you're going to
government.
make money on the bid and the offer, so I'm not worried
I'm not
about
sure
you
this is
because
gonna make it either
you
way.
are one of the greatest financial executives in the whole country.
either way.
But I would say this, if these pension funds or somebody has to buy bonds for actuarial reasons, at least buy the tips. At least buy the inflation-protected
inflation-
But wait a minute.
I just think it's early. I agree with you. I just think
has
it's
inflation at
early.
1.9% on average for 10 years.
Yeah, I know, but that spread was zero about 6 or 8 weeks
But
ago.
wait a minute.
It's too
Larry.
early. I'm telling
No,
you,
but
it's too
the
early.
tips itself, not the spread. You buy the
You know what? Hey, Howard?
let's-
Howard, can I don't know how much time you have, but this is going really well. If you're willing to stick around, I have to get a break in, and then we'll bring you back, and we'll actually get Larry his own mic. How about that? You got the time?
I'll happily stay with you. Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Here.
Okay.